Welcome to the SAG-AFTRA Foundation's Conversations at Home program. I'm Jenelle Riley with Variety. Before we're joined by today's guests, I want to let you know that the SAG-AFTRA Foundation is a nonprofit organization that relies entirely on donations to provide emergency assistance and free educational programs to SAG-AFTRA artists. This conversation today is made possible thanks to the generosity of our supporters. Over the past year, the foundation has given over $6.5 million in COVID relief to more than 7,000 performers. So if you are a SAG-AFTRA artist and you need help, please ask. And if you can help, please give. Information can be found in the description of this video. Thank you for your support. And now, without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce actor Oscar Isaac. Thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Jenelle. Happy to speak with you.
Always a pleasure. This is, as I said, an audience of your fellow SAG-AFTRA actors. So I actually like to start at the beginning by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
Well, first time, I think, it was a movie I did called All About the Benjamins in Miami. And it was 1999, 2000 is when I shot it. So it was my first speaking role. Yeah.
Oh, you actually spoke?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's not bad. You know, most people start with a local commercial or something, but that's actually a good movie.
I couldn't book a commercial. I couldn't. I tried. Trust me. I tried a lot of cell phones, a lot of Spanish commercials. I grew up in Miami, so there was a lot of that. And what's amazing is that I've run into Kevin Bray, who directed that movie a bunch of times. And that was my first introduction into any of that. And my big scene was with Roger Guinevere Smith, who was like a great New York actor. And no, it was a really special moment. And I remember on the DVD commentary, the director, he's like, this kid's really good. He's the Cuban Al Pacino, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God, it's my first role. I was so cool. Every time I see Kevin, I'm like, Kevin, you're the best, man. Give my
he wasn't
shot.
Wrong. I actually want to go back to the beginning. When did you first develop an interest in acting or performing? Were you the kind of kid that did school plays, local theater, anything like that? Or did it come to you later?
No, my dad bought a movie camera, like a video camera, like a high-8 camera when we were kids. And he would actually make movies with his brothers on a 8mm. And so he was always into that. And he had this VHS camera and a high-8 camera. And then he had this video equalizer. So we would do, he would film family trips and stuff. And then together we would add music to them and do the pause and record with the VHS player and make these tapes of our trips. And so that kind of got me into looking at movies in the same kind of way. And then we would make little horror movies with our family. And then around 5th grade is when I started doing school plays, and I got really into it. And then from that point on, I wrote my first, I wrote a musical about Noah's Ark. And then it was actually written as a short story, but then my teacher was like, we should do this as a musical. And that was kind of my first big production, was in 5th grade, this musical that I'd kind of inadvertently written.
That's so cool. And correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't your dad a doctor?
Yeah. So but he was always a frustrated artist as well as a musician. Yeah. So he had a lot of recording equipment and guitars and video cameras. And so I got a lot of that from him.
So you weren't necessarily discouraged from entering the arts?
No, I was never one way or the other kind of pushed into anything for better or worse. There wasn't a lot of you should do this. My dad was pretty loose with that stuff. And my mom was just trying to keep the household, afloat. So as far as the things that we wanted, and the truth is it happened so early for me and so intensely that there wouldn't have been any use in discouraging me. The only thing was, I remember I really wanted to go to film school. I thought that's what I wanted to do. Go to in Tallahassee, FSU, they had a really good film program for directing.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah. And then my dad was he's like, you should do what's before you with all your might. And you acting is, he was that's the same thing. It feels like that's what's really in front of you. So focus on that. And so that's kind of what I ended up doing. Cause I was starting to do professional theater in Miami a bit right after high school. So that kind of led to New York and then to going to Juilliard.
Have you looked at any of those old horror films lately that you shot as a kid? I would love for them to make their way to YouTube.
It's been a minute. It's been a minute, but yeah, I'm sure they'll find their way on there at some point. Yeah.
Growing up, who were the actors or filmmakers that you sort of looked up to or thought maybe they had a career you could kind of emulate? Like who made you think this was possible, or did you think it was possible?
Well, I remember the first time I really dawned on me that, just the craft part of it was Ridley Scott's Legend.
Really?
And I think it's also because I realized that the guy playing the devil was also the guy from Clue, which is Tim Curry, and he just his lip curled a certain way, and it just dawned on me. It was like a Kaiser Soze moment. I was just like, whoa, my God, that's the same guy. That's the devil. He was the guy in Clue. He's the butler. And I think that really just made such a huge impact on me. And so I think that sort of getting me kind of seeing like the behind the curtain a little bit and interested in what it takes to make that kind of performance and to change yourself into somebody. And so that was a big formative one. And then once I got into high school, I was Taxi Driver and, Reservoir Dogs and, and before that, actually, if I'm being honest, before that, there was a big martial arts moment with like Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Sure.
And so me and my friends would make martial arts movies, which was basically just like setting the camera up and then just like fighting each other and then like walking around and pressing record, but that was like, Time Cop and, Cyborg and all those movies. And then slowly when I got into high school, it became, Scorsese and Tarantino.
Again, you got to find these old movies.
Well,
I'm dying.
All of them are pretty good, actually. I got to say,
Really?
Some of them still hold up a little bit.
I am so embarrassed to admit I consider myself a huge Ridley Scott fan. I've never actually seen Legend. I know
Tom Cruise.
You know what? And the funny thing was, I had a huge crush on Tim Curry around that time. So you would think
this is going to light it back up because he is one sexy devil. I got to tell you.
Thank you. I find him incredibly sexy in a lot of the movies from the 80s. I remember going to see Hunt for Red October and everyone was like cooing about Alec Baldwin and Sean Connery. And I'm like, I'm here for Tim Curry.
It's just that curl of the mouth that he has and those like little fangs. Oh, he's the best. I really, really love Tim Curry.
Have you ever met him?
No.
I met him once and I almost fainted. Backstage.
Rocky Horror. Come on, it's like it doesn't get better. You got to see. I can't believe you haven't seen Legend and you love Tim Curry. He's so astounding in it. And I mean that he was in. I've like read about it where he was like in 8 hours of makeup and then had to like sit in a tub. I mean, this is really old school, and his entire body is red and he's got these massive horns. And I bitch about Apocalypse, but this must have been. I can't imagine.
By the way, you worked with Ridley Scott at least twice.
Yeah.
Did you ever tell him what an influence he was?
Of course. Yeah. I told him, when I first met him. I mean, such a massive influence. So I was so lucky and Ridley giving me a shot, particularly at Robin Hood, that was like such a massive confidence boost for me because one, I had played a small role, but then also for him to be able to see me in something like that, and for such a long time, I was just trying to fight this stereotype of all these kind of the same kind of roles that were being sent my way. The few that would be sent my way were always like heavily accented, weird brown guy in the background, or, luckily maybe a few scenes here and there. And then for him to trust me with that was just such a big deal for me.
And to ask you back, I always think it's the hugest compliment when a director wants to work with you again. So close together, really.
Yeah.
I think Body of Lies was only a year apart.
Yeah. That's right.
So going back pre-Juilliard, I know prior to your acting career taking off, you were part of it was a pretty successful band, wasn't it?
I mean, I'd been in a bunch of different bands. When in high school, I was in bands, and then right out of high school, I joined a band called Blinking Underdogs, which I did see recently. It was like, it's a Christian ska band. It wasn't a Christian ska band. It was a secular ska band. But yeah, they were all UM music majors. And so they were incredibly talented musicians. And then there was me, who just kind of self-taught, not very good, but I was writing the songs, right? So I had a lot of passion, what I made up for in musical talent. And we started playing a bunch, and we started touring a bit throughout Florida and a bit into the East Coast. And we opened for some pretty big bands and these big music festivals, and we're recording albums. And so then when I got into Juilliard, that was a big decision. And we kept the band together for about a year and a half, 2 years more, but then it just kind of became unmanageable. So I let it go.
So that was what made the decision for you getting into
Yeah. Because I knew that I was going to stay in New York. And then it just felt like these guys, I care about them so much. They're my friends. And I just didn't want them waiting around like, okay, are we going to get this thing going again?
So you were in group 34 of Juilliard, I believe.
Right.
I only recently learned about the groups. Different people have had very different experiences at Juilliard. I'm curious, first of all, how did you get in? Did you always know that like Juilliard was this place where the actors went? And did you know how to, obviously you knew how to apply because you got in.
Well, it was serendipitous. I had heard about it. When I first started, my first professional job in Miami was a touring children's theater thing. So we would go to all the high schools and some of the middle schools and put on this play about domestic violence. And I remember the stage manager, we had to go around in a circle and all say like what our experience was. And then it came to the stage manager, and he was like, I went to Juilliard. And then he started laughing like, yeah, right. Like any of us would ever go there. And I remember it stuck in my head. I was like, I could go there maybe at some point. I don't know, And so it kind of had stayed in my head. And then I ended up going up to New York to do a small off-Broadway play at the Cherry Lane Theater. And I was doing this play up there just for about a month. And I looked up where Juilliard was, and I passed by, and I went in and I asked for an application. And they had said that the deadline had passed. It was a Monday, and it was on Friday that it passed. And I was like, all right, well, can I get one anyway? Can I just take a look at it? So they gave it to me, and I went home that night and I filled it all out, and I brought it back the next morning. And I kind of schmoozed the lady there. I was like, please, is there any way? I'm sorry, I'm from Miami. I didn't realize it. And she's like, okay. And so she kind of post-stated it. Wow. And then I and that was the only place I applied to.
Wow. Did you have to audition?
Oh yeah. It was a very rigorous, intense audition.
That's what process. I thought.
Yeah.
That woman who post-stated it for you, she should be collecting 20%.
She should, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is that where you got what you would consider the bulk of your training?
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Juilliard and Dog Day Afternoon. I feel like those two things are like my big training. Watching that movie over and over and over and over and over and over again, and then going to Juilliard. I just ate it up. I was so ready and willing and excited and just hungry. Yeah.
But it's also, I've been told it's really, really tough. And I've heard that from people who've had very positive experiences. They're like, yeah.
No. And also a lot of people have very negative experiences too. And I completely understand why. I think the fact that I was a little bit older when I went in, I was 21. So I'd had a few years to do it a little bit. And I think, I don't know, maybe because I've always had a bit of like a distrust for authority naturally, so that I felt like it was easier for me to kind of, listen, but I had some personal boundaries about things, and I didn't feel the need to like, that's not who I am. It just kind of, I could be like, all right, whatever, that's bullshit. But this I really care about. And this doesn't matter. I kind of could get the game, we're going to break you down and build you up into this thing we want you to be. And I was like, cool, I'm down for it. But also didn't take that part so emotionally seriously, whereas some people can really get thrown off because, and also at the time, there was stuff that was fucked up about it. Like, it was called they're teaching you American standard speech as if whatever you're speaking is substandard,
Wow.
And, so it's like, there's this standard of what American speech is supposed to be. And so for me, it was always tools, not rules. These are just tools. And some of them you'll use, some of them you won't, some of them you'll find helpful, some of them you won't. And so for me, I kind of thrived there. That being said, there was a time when they put me on probation,
Really?
yeah, they felt like I wasn't trying hard enough. So they get in there, and I think it's changed quite a bit now, but at the time, there were still cuts. At the second year, they would do a bunch of cuts.
Oof. I always thought, correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought when you were at Juilliard, you weren't allowed to audition for outside things.
That's right.
But you did do a couple things. You did like Law and Order and All About the Benjamins while you were at Juilliard?
No, All About the Benjamins was before.
It was before.
And okay. Law and Order was right after.
So what kind of...
I did do, during the summer, you're allowed to.
Oh,
so I did a play in Ithaca in the summer. Yeah.
I didn't know you were allowed to. I don't know if that rule still applies or...
I don't know either.
Yeah. So when you went there, what kind of career were you imagining for yourself or hoping for yourself? Did you think it would be primarily theater? Did you always want to do film and TV?
I really got into it is a total fantasy because it doesn't really exist, I guess, unless you're like Mark Rylance. But it was like this old tradition of like Burbage going back to the the people walking the boards of the Globe. Like for me, it was like a long tradition of that, and like learning how to do these characters and the history of it. And it was just something that I didn't grow up with, and so it was so foreign in an interesting way to me that I just really got excited by that, and I fell in love with Chekhov and Shakespeare in particular, and so I think I just really fell in love with this idea of that kind of actor, a classically trained actor, someone that is connected to a history and a tradition.
I mean, it seems like you've made a point to get back to the theater when you can. I was lucky enough to see you in Hamlet at the Public, which 4 or 5 years ago, maybe?
Wow. That was 4.5 years ago, yeah.
Oh, wow. Is it that long? Okay.
2017.
What is it that you love about the medium of theater?
Well, the immediacy, of course, there's something about that. The fact that you have an opportunity to go back and keep investigating these scenes with people, particularly with Hamlet and moving in that direction. It almost having a more of a kinship to stand up in a way where you are recognizing that we're all in this room together. We're not pretending that we're somewhere else. And, there is a magic to that. But I was starting to get really excited about this idea of like, how do you, acknowledge that, yes, we are in this little room, in this city, in this state, in this country, on this little planet. And it's just us right now. And we're going to go through something together. There's something about that I find just really beautiful and really thrilling, and revisiting things that connect you to the legacy of what came before you. I haven't done a whole lot of new plays, which I'm excited at one point to do a bit more of that. But there is something about feeling not alone by reading something that was written, 500 years ago, and feeling like it's speaking directly to your present experience. There is something that's really powerful about that.
You've probably met other actors who played Hamlet. Have you ever commiserated?
Yeah. Particularly, I actually, right after I finished Hamlet, I went down to Argentina to shoot a movie, and Simon Russell Beale was in it. And I read his notes on playing Hamlet, and he's like one of the most celebrated Hamlets, and he was older when he did it too. And right before he did it, his mother passed away from pancreatic cancer, just like my mom did right before.
Wow.
So it just was, that alone was wild. And the fact that we were going to do a movie together, he doesn't even do that many movies. And so we became quick friends, and we talked so much about it. And then I talked to Ben Kingsley because I read about his, and he was in the same movie. I've talked to a lot of Hamlets, a lot of Hamlets.
I like the idea that so many people have played Hamlet with different takes, and you can all kind of commiserate about it.
Yeah. It's this, it's almost like a religious text. I can imagine hundreds of years from now, someone finding it and believing that it was it's a story of a prophet, it's about a religion, not a piece of theater. There's something about the ambiguity of it mixed with the just the deep truths that happen that make it feel like it's a religious text.
Yeah. I'm so lucky it was the first Shakespeare I ever read. So it really set the standard. I might not have gotten into Shakespeare had it not been that.
Yeah, I could imagine. But there's something that suddenly speaks in such a modern voice. It's a little shocking.
So how well did Juilliard sort of prepare you for the real world? Did you leave Juilliard with an agent? Did you have to go out and find one? Did they sort of set you up?
They do the showings, right? For the, what are they called?
Showcases?
Showcases, that's it. Yeah. The showcases for the agents in the industry. And we did one in LA and we did one in New York. And then afterwards you get a little list of the people that are interested. And I had, at that point, I had actually already gotten a manager. And so I did the showcases and I didn't get an agent coming out of there. Like there was some interest and I did some meetings, but it was still uncertain. So no, when I was there, and in a way, I kind of appreciate it now looking back a little bit, that it was really just focused on the craft. And you know what? You're going to have the rest of your career and time to worry about the agent. Am I with the right agent? Am I blah, 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 blah. But like right now, we're just focused on like teaching you how to break down a play, teaching you how to make a character, teaching you how to move your body, teaching you how to connect with your voice and your breath. And so the on-camera classes that we had, they're kind of hilarious. It was just like, they'd put a camera up and then you would act. I remember the teacher, he was like, an actor should be like, like a little child or a crazy person, you bring them from the trailer, you have them do something crazy, then you give them a cookie and you take them back to the trailer. This is what film and TV actor is, and so like, there wasn't a lot that came from that. And definitely there wasn't a lot of like business stuff or, like finances or how do you operate in this world. And that's tough. It's tough because when you come out, you do realize, there is just an entire industry built around just the speculation over the craft and over what you do, and you don't know how to operate in that because, it's just like a perception game. So you're like, I guess you're the right person. And we're talking about what I can do possibly and how you're going to sell me to this and this casting director. And can they bring me in for this? Blah, blah. So very quickly, you're kind of told not to worry about it. We'll take care of all the rest. And it's a tough position to be in because you either have to find people you really trust or just kind of gamble on the fact that these people that have shown interest in you and the people that you've decided to go with are after your best interests. And it can be a very tough situation to give up that kind of agency over. That they're an agent, right? So you no longer have agency over yourself. And that's a scary, but it's still scary, even this many years later.
It seems like, I'm sure it always seems easier from the outside, but it feels like you started working pretty quickly. You landed a lead role in, I think it was 2006 is the Nativity Story, working with Catherine Hardwicke, who I love.
Well, when I first came out, I did, I got to do Shakespeare in the Park.
Oh, wow.
A part originated by Raul Julia, who was like my idol. I just always looked up to him so much as a Latino man who was not, boxed in by his personal biography, but he got to do the thing that, I for me as an actor that I love so much, which is bring your own life to many other lives and connect those gaps, bridge those gaps of experience to really feel like we're connected. Not just, I'm not just interested in like presenting my life to people, it's like for me, it's like my imagination is what I'm most excited about presenting to people. Anyway, and so I love that he did that, he did that in a major way, Three Penny Opera on Broadway, he did Betrayal. He originated
That's right.
the role in Betrayal on Broadway. Like that's mind blowing. He did a Harold Pinter play. He was the first person to do the play on Broadway in the States, and he's this Puerto Rican guy. So that was really exciting. And he did this play in the late 70s, Two Gentlemen of Verona, and so I got to do that play. And then shortly after that, I got my first real big role, which was Scott Burns wrote and directed this movie called PU 239 with Patty Considine. It was an HBO movie.
Yeah.
We shot it out in Romania, and I loved every minute of it. I, did a thick Russian accent and was out there with Patty Considine, who was such a great artist, and with my buddy Scott Burns, who we've stayed really close. And so, yeah, that was like the first, real heavy supporting, almost co-lead role. And then I did a couple other things, and then the Nativity Story happened. Well, yeah.
I mean, first, to address the Raul Julia thing, you also stepped into his shoes as Gomez Adams. I don't know if that was a tribute to him or just coincidence.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Also that. Yes, of course.
It will not surprise you to learn that I also had a crush on Raul Julia. You might be noticing it.
We got a lot of the same crushes. We got to compare our cards here.
Yeah. There's something about people who look good with pencil thin mustaches. I don't know what it is, but that's a bonus for me. But Nativity Story was, it's Catherine Hardwicke coming off Twilight. It's the lead role in a pretty big film, and you're also playing Saint Joseph. Yeah. Were you overwhelmed at any point?
I was overwhelmed when we premiered it at the Vatican.
What?
And yeah, we premiered it at the Vatican with like 3,000 Catholics. And then as I was walking out, I got mobbed by nuns. That was overwhelming. You know what I mean? Because they don't get to have a sex symbol very often, the nuns. Yeah. And so to get a little, shirtless Saint Joseph there, they were pretty stoked.
Yeah, I do remember like when I started to become like aware of your career later, I was always like, oh, that's Hot Joseph. I remember because I actually really, I know so little about the Bible. I'm embarrassed to admit it's a good story.
There's the Bible in general. It's a pretty good story. Yeah.
It is.
And they got they did a lot of crazy shit in there, but that one was nice.
So I remember actually really enjoying that movie. Yeah. And being like, maybe if they just made more movies about this, I'd know a lot more about the Bible. But I love that. I love that nuns are people too.
Nuns are people too. No, that was very sweet. No, I enjoyed that. I mean, we were out in Italy, shooting in Italy out there, and Catherine's just such a wild, crazy artist, like just fantastic. Yeah. I really enjoyed that too. And then I didn't work for 2 years after that.
Were you serious?
Yeah. I was in Jersey. I had enough to like get this little apartment in New Jersey. I was living in Jersey City, and it felt like, oh, this was a big break. And then it was like a year and a half, 2 years, and auditioning and almost getting stuff, and then getting something, and then it fell through. And that was a really tough time to just try to keep, stay motivated and just keep going for it and keep working on just getting better at the craft. And that's really the only thing you have control over. You don't have control over anything else other than your craft and getting better at it, reading the books, getting into workshops, working with people, reading plays. That's the thing that can be controlled. The rest of it, you can't. And then once you just kind of go down that total speculative place, then you just like lose so much energy. And that happened to me. That was a really tough
Do you think years. There was any problem with typecasting, or was it just a fallow period? I
mean, I did have that for a while, and then coming out of Juilliard as well, like anything that I was getting, it was just like strictly, very like the ethnic guy, like I had the Russian guy, and then it was, Joseph, and then it was the Ridley Scott, the Iraqi translator, and it was all. It was very, very much in that world. And so, yeah, it was a bit of that. It was a bit of that, and me wanting to kind of find the right things. And then the next thing that I got was Romeo and Juliet in the park again.
Oh.
And I got to play Romeo out there with Lauren Ambrose as Juliet. And that was just like, it was so amazing. And just fed me again, to be able to work on that kind of text and in that theater out in the open air. And then shortly after that, I think I booked another film.
I'm curious, what your relationship is with the audition process, especially starting out, because believe it or not, I've met a couple actors who claim to like it, or try to be philosophical about it,
Yeah.
because there's no other way. But you must have been pretty good at auditioning. You started working pretty quickly.
Well, I was auditioning a lot, and I think that's the thing. It's a numbers game, right? So it was just going out a lot. So I did get fortunate that I was being asked to come in a lot, and the things that I booked, generally it wasn't a huge surprise when I would get them, because going in, I'd feel so connected to the material in a really strong way. And there's also times when I felt connected to the material, and then I would get in there and then it just didn't connect. Something didn't happen, Again, you can't control it sometimes. It's just something about the room or the smell or the person or the light or the thing, it just goes. And I don't like auditioning. It's like nerve-wracking. It's really tough. And then sometimes it's fun. And then sometimes sometimes it's like, here's my chance to do this role. Like, I love this role. I've worked on it. I really love living in this story. And this is a chance to live in that story. I might not get another chance, let me just enjoy that bit of it. So whenever I found the joy in it, and whenever I really let myself kind of live in that character and in that story, it would tend to be a really good experience. And more often than not, I'd get the role.
And I shouldn't say you're getting into producing. You've been producing for a while now. Do you have much involvement in casting as a producer?
It's funny because it's official. It's more official now. But I mean, I've been doing this since All About the Benjamins. Like, on that one, I came in and I was like, I have an idea. I was like, what if? And so, like, coming up with like rewrites and, like, not knowing my place, but not coming from a place of like, I want more. It was just, it's like a honest curiosity. And so I feel like that's why, it's never felt like some weird, like, ego power grab, and so I've often ideas and things, because also I'm the first one to admit it's a terrible idea too. Like, I don't, it's just about like, let's just throw stuff out here. Here's a thought. What do we think? Like, why not? We have one shot at getting this. Like, let's just throw it all out on the table and see maybe if there's a more interesting thing here. But so with producing, so it's something I've always been doing, is like coming up with thoughts and ideas. And especially if I get cast early, I'm like, who are you thinking for these other roles? Who I imagine? I kind of imagine this person. What do you think? So at this point, I don't think I've had anything where I've like got casting approval, but I'm always excited about it, and excited to give my thoughts about who I could see as this person, and every once in a while I'll get some auditions sent my way as well and take a look at them. And one that I've always felt very proud of, I remember when we were doing Llewyn Davis, the Coens, I was going to their office all the time, and they're like, hey, we're looking at some auditions. You want to look at some? I was like, yeah, sure. And they're like, yeah, we're looking at for Al Cody. So we're kind of between these two actors. We got this guy, and I listened to that guy, and I was like, okay. And then like, we got this guy, and I was like, all right, that guy's really good too. I was like, that guy's really interesting looking, and he's a really good actor. The other guy's maybe a bit maybe better singer, or he's kind of singing a bit, but that guy's kind of interesting. And they're like, yeah, we think so too. That was Adam. Adam Driver ended up playing Al Cody. And so he owes everything to me, is basically.
I was just going to say, you're responsible.
He owes me 20%.
And yet he's always on screen trying to kill you.
Such a piece of shit. That was a fun one. I remember we very much connected when he got to set.
Well, I was going to talk about Inside Llewyn Davis, obviously, because that had to be a major turning point for you. Working with the Coen brothers landed you a slew of Critics Awards and Golden Globe and Independent Spirit Award nominations. Mm-hmm. Going back, I mean, how did you even first come to the attention of Joel and Ethan?
I willed it. It was The Secret. It was like Oprah. I was just like screaming it into the universe, literally like, give me this, please, God, give me this. I wanted it so bad. Never wanted anything more than that. I first read about it, that they were going to make this movie about a folk singer. I told my manager and agent at the time, like, you got to get me in for this thing. I'm a musician as well. Like, they're my favorite filmmakers. Please, you got to do this. And then Scott Burns is friends with T-Bone Burnett, who did the music. And so I remember I sent him a video and I was like, can you get this to T-Bone? And he's like, okay, I'll do my best. And eventually, through the casting director and through the Coens and through T-Bone and everybody, they're like, okay, this guy seems like he could be pretty good. Let's bring him in for an audition. And so I came in and auditioned for them. Just the one time. I mean, I auditioned for the casting director, and then they brought me back in, played a few songs for the Coens, did a couple scenes, and then waited a month. And then Joel called me and he said, hey, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this with us? I couldn't believe it. And I was on my opening night of a play I was doing that Zoe Kazan had written called We Live Here. Yeah. And so it was just like it was the craziest time.
Were they specifically looking for someone who like wasn't a big established star name? Because
they were looking for whoever could do it.
Really?
I mean, they looked at everybody. I remember I went in because I knew it was based on Dave Van Ronk, who is like a 6'5", 300-pound Swede.
Yeah.
And I knew, I was like, this is such a long shot. And then I came into the casting office and I saw a picture of Ray LaMontagne. And I was like, oh, okay. So is this kind of a reference for the character? And suddenly I was like, okay, I think I got this. And they're like, no, he just came in. He killed it. I was like, oh God, just kill me now. So no, they were looking at musicians. They were looking at everybody, actors, musicians, and yeah, what they wanted. Ultimately, I think, it's like someone that maybe you didn't know so well, and it's the guy that didn't make it. The story really is about the not Bob Dylan, and so I just still to this day, it's like the one thing that I still can't believe sometimes. It feels like a dream.
Did you feel that film, changed your life or at least your career?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as soon as I got the role, I was already getting sent different type of material. That was my first lead role. I had never had a lead role in a film before. And I'd been at that point, that was 2012, right? And I graduated in 2005. So, that was 7 years of working. And so, it really shifted at that point.
And I've never met anyone who, maybe it's just a very secretive process, but who can really describe how the Coen brothers work. It makes it sound like such a mystery. Are they very hands-on with actors, or is it more about casting someone and trusting them?
It's a bit of both. It's about like the situation, I mean, they do trust all the people that they get, but it feels, they're like they're folk artists. And so there's something that always feels quite homegrown about it. There's something that is quiet about it. There's not a lot of judgments, good or bad. So I think maybe there was once or twice they said that was good, and they really didn't say that was bad either. It would just be like, and you'd be like, okay, all right, okay. Or it'd be like, yeah, that was kind of it, and so that was a really, really great lesson. And it really helped to shift that neediness of that actor thing of like doing something, being like, was that good? Was that good? Was that good? Because really quickly you found out, all right, they're not going to give you that. That's not what we're doing here. We're not doing that was good, that was bad. We're doing like, let's just like move through, let's build this thing together and let's figure out what works. Sometimes they'd give me different direction. And I would just do whatever the last one said. And we would talk a lot. We talked a lot, especially beforehand, a lot about music and a lot about movies. And even during it, we would sit in between takes and talk about all sorts of things. And they would tell me stories about the stuff that they'd done. And it just like, it was such a deep experience that happened. It was like, it really felt familial. I felt, to this day, I still feel very much like it's, we're family. And it just, it was like welcoming me into this way of working that was different as well. I still use this thing too, which sometimes they'd be like, like the set decorator would come on and he's like doing something to the back on the window. And then they'd be like, okay, you're doing too good of a job. You're doing too good of a job, which is also a kind of generous way of saying stop. It's like, okay, that's it. Now you're focusing on you doing a good job, but we got a bigger thing to do right here, which is like, we got to shoot it now,
Yeah.
And I love that. You're doing too good of a job. I just, it's such a deep, like aching love that I have for both Joel and Ethan and for that experience.
And there's some irony that like sort of your big break came from playing a guy who, never got his break or didn't make good on his break.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, it's hard to, again, like kind of speculate as to why something, doesn't become fashionable in the moment, but I think the fact that it's in some ways anti-aspirational, Americans, we really love that, winner takes all kind of thing. And the truth is so much more painful than that for the majority of people. And so, I think that's also why there's just something so beautifully subversive about that film and the way that film plays out, that rings true, I think, to a lot of people, particularly musicians.
And you've probably encountered this, but I know people who believe that Llewyn Davis is a real person.
Oh, really?
Yeah, there was I remember someone at a Q&A asking what Llewyn Davis was doing today, and John Smith's face and he's like, I'm sorry, do you think Llewyn Davis is real? But I mean, that's a testament to the story, really.
That's great. Yeah, it's great.
So after that, you reunited with your Juilliard classmate, Jessica Chastain, for A Most Violent Year. Had the two of you been looking for something to do together for a while, or was it coincidence?
Yeah, I mean, for sure. Like we were such good friends at school and kept in touch, and we would go to each other's premieres. She came to the Nativity premiere, I remember. I went to the Debt premiere when she had it, and we had just stayed in touch. And I'm not sure that I was, and then at some point when she just like blew up, and the Terrence Malick movie came out, and for me it wasn't like, when are we going to do that thing together? It was who knows. But she reached out to me saying she was doing this movie, and Javier was the one that was going to maybe do it, Javier Bardem, and then he ended up pulling out of it. And so she's like, there's an opportunity. I think you'd be great in it. You should meet JC. And I was at Telluride actually with Llewyn Davis at that point. So this was 2013. And I was getting ready to shoot Ex Machina. So I had like the big beard and the shaved head. And then JC met me and he's like, this guy, that's not really how I see. I was like, no, I can grow the hair back. I can shave the beard. Trust me, it's going to be okay. And so we talked a bit, and ended up doing that. And that was just so fun to do that with Jessica.
I actually want to come back to that shaved head and beard in a second, but I want to jump forward really quickly because obviously you and Jessica reunited on Scenes from a Marriage this year. Again, was it something you'd been looking to do together for a while, and what made this the right project?
Well, I mean, we had a really amazing time doing Most Violent Year, and there's plays that we've talked about here and there, and so it's definitely on our radar because it's evident to us how effortless it is to work together. And so when I got sent the script and met with Hagai Levy, who wrote and directed it, along with Amy Herzog, who also wrote it. And I hadn't been offered it. It was just a meeting, and I met with him. And right afterwards, I wrote to Jessica saying like, hey, I just met on this thing. It's not mine, but you're the person obviously I'd want to do this with if it comes my way. You should check this out. And then she said, oh, I'd love to do it. When are they doing it? Oh, I'm not sure I can do it then, but blah, blah, blah. I was like, all right, yeah. And then it ended up coming my way. And at that point, she wasn't available anymore. And Michelle Williams ended up jumping on board to do it. And then, a few months before, she had to pull out of it. And because of the way that, what happened with the pandemic and things getting shuffled around, suddenly Jessica was available for it. And so like 3 days before rehearsal, she jumped on board.
That's amazing.
And we were in it.
I mean, it is so honest and raw and occasionally brutal. Are you kind of glad you went through that with a friend?
I'm so happy. Yeah. I mean, you obviously, what ends up happening is in some ways the only thing that could have happened if you're a determinist, right? But the fact that it did play out the way it played out, and it's someone that I know so well and can't hide from and can't lie to, and that kind of intimacy, it's very, very hard to cultivate in such a short amount of time. It takes a lot of effort to do that, and the fact that we didn't have the time to do that, that's just it was such a gift that we already had that in place.
How do you think, did you notice when you were working together this time, how either of you had changed or grown or anything different since the first time you worked together?
Yeah. I mean, and one thing that actually made me think about though too, which is also, but it's also not just knowing someone. I mean, people that know, just because people know each other doesn't mean they're going to work great together, and oftentimes it can be the opposite. Sometimes you need that surprise. It's like, I don't want the person to know my tricks, like I want to be able to do it. So some, it's always a risk. But there's something about the way that her and I also approach the work that I think also adds to something that's kind of hard to name why it works so well. It's not just knowing each other, because there's lots of things that I've seen where people know each other and it doesn't quite work, and there's other times when I've done things with people that I know really well too and it just doesn't quite work. Mm-hmm. So it's a mysterious thing. But I don't know if it's so much about growth in the last time. I mean, I'm sure that some of it's that we're in such different places in our lives.
Yeah.
We're both parents, where we've both been through quite a bit, shared griefs and things that have happened in life. And so it was just an amazing thing to come back together. Like Most Violent Year, I think we were both in a kind of hungrier, ambitious, like kind of lone wolf place. And then coming together at this point where there's, priorities have shifted so much. It was different.
So going back to 2015, which was a huge year for you, beginning with Ex Machina, where you're playing, this reclusive CEO, might be a little bit crazy, but, very, very brilliant. You did take on a very different look for this character. And I'm curious if that was something you developed with Alex. Was that in the script?
No.
Or was that all you?
Yeah, no, we up until I think 3 days before, I had like this big wig, like big long black hair, because we're like, oh well, he's like, why would he cut his hair? He wouldn't shave. He's like, he doesn't see anybody. He's just up there by himself. And then we're like, well, what if he shaved his head right before Caleb got there? Maybe that's what he did. Maybe he had that long hair. And then I think we had even some kind of scene where I did have the hair, and then you would know that I shaved it. It didn't end up working. But no, so that was bit by bit figuring it out. I think Alex did say, he's like, I've always imagined it with a beard. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to start with the beard. And then we ended up going with the shaved head. And then the glasses for me was a nod to Kubrick, because I would listen to Kubrick's voice a lot too. For me, it was like Kubrick mixed with Bobby Fischer, like, that kind of very dark thing going on. Mm-hmm. That's what that character was. And then obviously the script, he's very physical, and so he needed to be physically imposing as well as mentally.
I mean, that might have been your first experience with really that film. First of all, is so good, and it blew up in a way that, like, there was a moment it entered like kind of the pop culture consciousness. Were you aware? Did you start seeing like the videos of Nathan and Kyoko dancing together, and like, did you know it would become such a thing?
No, it's impossible to know when you're doing it, but I think I know when, like, it was on Obama's list of like top movies. I was like, holy shit, it was very cool.
I don't know if you're very active on social media, but would you see the frequent dancing GIFs or GIFs?
People would send them to me. Yeah, people would send me the GIFs, and it makes sense. It's just such a wildly bizarre thing to happen in the middle of this very kind of earnest, dark film, you know?
Was it scripted and choreographed or
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of moment?
It was
Okay.
choreographed within an inch of its life. Mr.
Really?
Disco, like 1997 or something, came and worked with us for 2 weeks. So yeah, it was choreographed.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That
Well, then
doesn't come naturally.
how nice that people responded to it so strongly, I guess.
Oh yeah, it's good. It's good.
So also obviously in 2015, you made your first appearance in the Star Wars universe.
Yes.
I actually want to go back to the beginning. What was your relationship with Star Wars prior to being a part of it? Were you a hardcore fan, a casual? I don't think there's anyone who isn't at least a casual fan.
Yeah, well, it was a big part of my family growing up. Like my uncle in particular, my brother and my cousin, massive fans. Particularly during the prequels when they came out, you know, everyone was dressing up, like they were stood in line. They collect all of the toys. My uncle, who's in his, you know, he's in his mid 50s. We grew up with him collecting and making all of like the R2D2s and the big ships. And, oh yeah, and he collected all of the toys. So it was like a huge part of us growing up. So yeah, that I was going in with that. And so when I got word that JJ wanted to talk to me about a part, he wanted me to fly to Paris to meet him. Yeah, it was incredibly exciting.
So no hesitation about joining such an iconic franchise.
There was a bit of hesitation when I got there because they're like, okay, he's going to be in it. And then, you know, he's just in the very beginning and then he dies. And I was like, okay, all right. You know, I'm not going to say that I'm not a little disappointed. I was hoping it'd be something a little juicier, but okay. And then he kind of started thinking about it and then he shifted it and then it changed. So, you know, it was more about like, is there something for me to do in it? You know, that's interesting. Yeah. And, you know, the way we talked about it, particularly for that first movie, it felt like, oh no, there's something really cool there, something fun to do in that one. And then it was like, yeah, why not? Why wouldn't I?
I didn't know that. I didn't know you were supposed to die originally.
Yeah. So like when they crash, that's the end of Poe. You know, and it's something that he's done before. Like I think I remember in Star Trek, I think it happens, right? Where it starts off with like Chris Hemsworth and then he dies.
Yeah.
You know, it's like this kind of it's a what's it called when you
homage or
no, not an homage, but you know, it's like a sleight of hand kind of idea, you know, it's like a red herring, right? Where you're like, you think it's going to be this like heroic guy, but it's actually the stormtrooper, you know, that's who the lead guy is, you know? So it's this kind of idea, but then they kind of got, you know, he shifted it and kept thinking about it. And then he's like, oh no, what if he comes back in this part, blah, blah. And, you know, and so it was a fun journey to go on.
And to train for that, I don't know how you prepare. Is there like a Jedi school that, you know, I'm joking, but I'm not. Like, do they have people that teach you how to do all that?
Janelle, I wasn't a Jedi, so I wouldn't have gone to the Jedi school. Okay.
You're right.
Okay. No, you know what I actually did do? It's funny because I'm in my office here and we just had taken the books down and put the books back up. And I saw a couple of these books and they were the books that I had gotten in order to prepare. And it's, for me, it's just like, what can I hook into that just connects me emotionally in some way? And I bought these books about World War II fighter pilots, just to get some sense of like, what is it? You know, like what's the mentality? Like, what do you have to do when you're up there and how do you get there? And what's a real history? You know, obviously it's not a perfect analogy. You know, this is the space and the rebels and all this different stuff, but what is the connection to actual people that have lived on this earth, you know? And that was an interesting thing to see. And I would get pieces of music that would inspire me in some way. And yeah, and just try to ground it in something recognizable so that you weren't just up there posing.
Well, that's kind of the challenge, I think, presented by a movie like Dune, because Dune it's so epic and so fantastical, but the performances are really grounded. And it's really heartfelt, like Timothée Chalamet, his character, he loves his dad. Like he is so attached to you. You know, I'm first curious what attracted you to Dune, but also how you keep that grounded feeling in, you know, these fantastical worlds.
Yeah, because it's interesting because it's one, it's about being grounded, but also still maintaining the tone of the piece, you know, because sure, you know, naturalism isn't always the answer. Sometimes like a super cash naturalistic performance, even though it seems more like real, that's just it's not in the tone of the film, or it's not in the tone of the story. And so for me, like the tone is really important, and finding that tone, and then within that tone getting the emotion, and within those constructs, like that's an exciting thing, because that forces me out of my comfort zone a bit, right? So for Dune, well, one, I loved the book, and then when I found that Denis was doing it, and he and I had become friends already, and so I just wrote to him saying, like, I know you're doing Dune, I love this book, just letting you know. And then he was like, okay, interesting, thanks for letting me know. And then I didn't hear from him for a while, and then he ended up calling me saying, I've got the script, I want to send it to you, I'm not sure what part yet, just take a look at it, see if something resonates in particular, other than Paul. And I was like, all right, okay. So I took a look, and I thought that was interesting that he didn't necessarily come in with a very strong idea of what he wanted me in it for. But my sense, I read it, and although there was a couple things, but for me, if I thought about it, I'm like, it's the Duke. I mean, that really seems to be like where that's what I would, if I was directing, and I would cast me in that part, And so that's what we said, and he agreed. And I liked the idea of somebody that is up against a completely impossible situation, that he's, in the book in particular. I mean, before you even meet him for like 2 chapters, everyone's just being like, yeah, he's fucked. Yeah, he's sorry. Yeah, no bueno for old Duke Leto, and so like already there's this impending doom about him. Yeah. And yet you meet him, and he's still fighting, and he's still trying to figure it out, and he's still trying to do things in the most noble way possible. And and there's all of this kind of paranoia that he would, and who anyone else would just succumb to the paranoia of everything, and yet he doesn't allow himself to do that. And what's amazing is that it's not the spice that's making him have a higher conscience. It's his own values. And I just found that really beautiful. He's the most human out of all the characters in a way, he's the most human-like, like he doesn't, he doesn't have any special powers that have been cultivated, through genetic experimentation or through this special spice melange or through all this stuff. It's really just a sense of what does it mean to be an ethical ruler, and how do we survive, even though we know we're going into a trap? How can we use it to our advantage?
I mean, he's kind of Shakespearean.
Yeah. I mean, it is. It's Shakespeare in space a little bit,
So I'm not surprised that's the one you were drawn for, although I would think you would pick a character who could be in both movies. Just
I should be more of a careerist. You're right.
And I actually haven't read Dune, so for all I know, he does come back. I shouldn't.
You haven't read Dune. You haven't read the Bible.
I assume Dune is in black and white. What is some of or are some of the challenges of making films like Star Wars and Dune? Probably less so in Dune, but the special effects, a lot of that gets filled in later. I would think one of the hardest things would be acting opposite something that's not there.
No, I mean, that's not so hard. I mean, a bit in the X-Wing, like that stuff's pretty hard, because you're just having to react so intensely to a lot of stuff, and not feeling super eggy about those things is hard. You just got to commit. It takes a lot of energy. With things like Star Wars, and actually to a certain point with Dune as well, when you're in service to those much bigger things, there's not a lot of incoming energy. A lot of it's just like pouring energy out, and you don't get a lot back, because it's just the nature of it. It's the nature of the scenes. It's the nature of the structure of a lot of these things. They share similar structures. It's so much about the pieces of the design, and obviously, you want to fill those scenes with emotion as well. And Dune in particular is just so much visual poetry that's happening in it. But, it's not, you're not getting a ton of fire back from those scenes. You're kind of like trying stuff, you're trying to make it as grounded and as emotionally honest as possible, and it goes out there and you hope it works, and then you go home and you're really, really tired. Whereas somehow scenes from Marriage or Card Counter, somehow those things, they feed you energy back, and so you leave as tiring as that stuff is, but you leave kind of high. It is, it's like it's like you just were like big wave surfing or something.
Did you know Timothy at all before making Dune? Because like I said, your chemistry, like you really feel like father and son, and he just seems so in love with his father. It's so nice to see. Did that just kind of happen instantaneously?
It really did. It just happened. He was so enthusiastic and sweet and generous and like just no pretension whatsoever. And that was really refreshing. Mm-hmm. And I've said it a lot, but it's that old adage where I remember in school we would play a status game, right? So basically what you would do is we'd get a deck of cards, and mm-hmm. you'd lick the card and you'd put it on your forehead, and nobody knew what their own card was, and you just had to wander around the room, and you had to behave to the other person. You had to react to whatever status they had, and you didn't know what you were, but the way that you would find out what you were is how people were treating you, right? So if people were like bowing to you, you're like, okay, I've got a jack, queen, king, maybe an ace. If people were just like pushing you aside, you knew you were pretty low. It would get really hard when you were like a 7, 8. You're like, what am I here? I can't tell, And it just was a great reminder that status, you can't play status. It's everyone around you that gives you your status. So I'm playing the king, right? I'm playing Duke Leto. I'm playing dad. It's Timothy that has to establish the status of that character. And so his generosity is what kind of allows me to look like such a badass, is because he does look at me like this man is everything to me, and he was willing to cultivate that off screen as well, and we became really, really close friends, and really, really love the kid.
Talking about the status game, I still remember like how awful it was to be a 2, because you just knew, because people would push you. It would always be violent, and they'd like push you, but someone else would push you back. Like, and I know it's just a game,
but also kind of freeing too, because you could be like, like a leper,
You mentioned the Card Counter, and I actually want to talk about that movie because the response to your performance has been so fantastic. It comes to us from Paul Schrader, who's just one of the best writers. Great director too, but his scripts are so amazing, and they're always these great character studies. It intrigued me to hear you say that it fed you, because it feels like the role of William Tell would be exhausting. I mean, his background, having spent time in a military prison, kind of the darkness in which he exists. But you didn't find, maybe it had different challenges, but
it's so active. I think that's what it is, for as beautiful and as fun it is to do Dune, it's almost more like verbal choreography, right? Whereas as something like Card Counter, it's just it's so active. All of the stuff that he lays out for you, Paul Schrader, whether it's the way he writes in his journal, the penmanship, the military background, the card counting, the cardistry, the meticulousness with which he approaches everything that he does. All of it is activated, and so because of that, the mind is just like working, and you're living in that stuff. And then also his writing, speaking of, betrayal, it's like Pinter. It's very Pinteresque. You could read it and it looks completely mundane. Some of the writing, sometimes it doesn't even seem like it totally connects. But if you give yourself over to this train of thought, it's just like it unleashes all this subconscious behavior. And I think that's what's particularly so exciting about it. You're not reaching, I'm not like trying to find some random book that might inspire some kind of behavior. It's within the lines somehow. It's just like indicates to you, it shows you all the possibility of behavior that's there, and that's so exciting.
Did you have much knowledge or experience with gambling? I'm a blackjack person. I don't really, I don't play any other kind of card games. But it looked really authentic.
Yeah, well, I've played a bit of poker. And then we, Joe Stapleton, we had, was like a great, poker expert on there, and he was helping keeping us honest. So yeah, a bit of experience, but not a ton.
I mean, whenever I see a movie with a card counter, I always think it would be such a cool skill to learn, but it's probably not that easy, I'm going to guess.
Probably not, especially when you're as terrible at math as I am.
Same here. Speaking of chemistry, we have to talk about your scenes with Tiffany Haddish, because she's such a fantastic actor, and you two are so great together. And, every time you work with like a new co-star, and obviously her background comes mainly from comedy, it just must be so fun to discover, a new scene partner like that.
From day one, I really fell in love with her. She just was, remember the first thing I said, I was like, "Hi, Tiffany, how you doing?" And she said, "Successful." Like, damn, I love this person so much. She just was great and totally game, and Paul's old school, that old dog bites. And so he, he'd be brutally honest about certain things, and just to see her just kind of be like, "Okay, yeah, I hear you. And just like take the direction and shift and stay positive. And I have nothing but the utmost respect for her. And I really loved working on those scenes together and running lines. And we just laughed so much. And I remember when he first mentioned her, I could not have been more excited.
Yeah.
When he had mentioned her and said that she was interested.
I do think if you can do comedy, you can do pretty much anything.
Yeah. I mean, just the risk, it's like to not be afraid to take those kind of risks, and the kind of honesty that it requires are the really good comics, like that's everything, yeah. And with that movie, it had felt like it had been a while since I had really gotten to dive into a character study, and one that is so much about this person's mental state, but then also brilliantly about the allegory of the American consciousness, and the shared guilt of this country after this endless war that has just happened, and the way he fuses those two things together, and also incredibly subversively, puts this revenge thriller on its head, and doesn't give you that kind of thing that you want, and the thing that you're expecting of both of a revenge story and of a gambling story. He goes in for something else, and not afraid, with risk taking, not afraid to lose people, to try to go into, to try to find a deeper truth.
I would really like to see a movie now where you and Willem Dafoe are nice to each other for the whole running time.
Yeah. I guess Gauguin wasn't that nice to him, was he?
Not in the, well, look, Gauguin was pushed to the edge with that guy around. I don't blame him.
Yeah.
My friend actually wrote about a play called The Art Couple.
Oh, yeah.
The time that Paul Gauguin and Van Gogh spent together, and it's also kind of a Neil Simon parody. Yeah,
like The Odd Couple. Yeah.
Yes, and I just felt so bad for Gauguin the whole time. But when you did at Eternity's Gate, it was you've played a few real people before. Obviously, Show Me a Hero, which you won a Golden Globe for. Technically, Joseph, I guess. Some people think Llewyn Davis is real. I'm curious, when you're playing, someone who really existed, do you approach it differently than you would a fictitious character? Do you feel an extra responsibility?
No responsibility. I get excited because there's more to look at. There's more to absorb, there's behavior to absorb. There's idiosyncratic things that, see that just feed you and get and make me excited. But no, there's no, I don't ever feel much responsibility other than making it honest, as honest as I can.
And what would you say has been your most challenging role for whatever reason?
Most challenging. I don't know. It's tough. Llewyn Davis was definitely incredibly challenging because of, it being the first lead role, trying to block out any of that pressure of what it needed to be, the musical component of it. We did everything live. We recorded all that music live. That was really, really challenging. Yeah, I guess I'd say Llewyn Davis still.
Jumping back to Dune, I know that this was shot before the pandemic and it's been a long time. And like the fact that, I just did something with Dean Lee like a week ago and he is still selling out houses. Mm-hmm. Like people are still crowding in to see that movie. And it must be so great not only to finally have it out there for the world to see, but people are actually responding to it.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Yeah,
it's great. Also because, it was supposed to come out a year ago. Yeah.
I want to touch on your work as a producer a little bit, because I know you've already produced several films and series, and you launched a production company, I believe, mm-hmm. Mad Gene Media, which that's right. I don't know why it's called that, but I'm intrigued.
Okay. Mads and Eugene, those are our two sons.
Oh, here I was thinking, you know what? I was thinking like Ex Machina, Mad Genius kind of stuff.
Yeah, cool. That's why we liked it, because it has that element to it too.
Oh, that's cool. What sort of projects are you interested in as a producer?
I think ones that are personal. The approach I think is going to be a similar approach to the way that I approach working on a film, which is really connecting it to something profoundly personal and some sort of personal expression. So that's like I think the first criteria, whether it's something that we're interested in making or some friends of ours that have come to us with something, or someone that's come to us with something, that it has an incredibly personal point of view. So, there isn't so much of a sense of like the genre, or it's got to be this, or even the medium. We're doing graphic novels and TV and film and podcasts and all that. But I think the idea that it has to have a real emotional, personal point of view, and something to say. I think starting with that.
Did I hear you were adapting a graphic novel called Ex Machina?
Yeah, I'm a producer on it. Yes, it has nothing to do with that Ex Machina, but yeah, it's a different Ex Machina. But yeah.
Who gets two Ex Machinas in their life? That's kind of crazy.
It's strange, isn't it? I know. Who would have thought? Who would have thunk it?
And can you talk about what's up next? I think you've already done Moon Knight.
Yes, Moon Knight's all in the can. Right now we're just looking at cuts and giving notes and trying to get it to where it needs to go. And it's incredibly exciting. It was really exciting to share a little tiny taste of it with everybody. And that's, to be honest, right now, that's kind of it. Yeah. There's some things bubbling and percolating in the future, but often until I'm on a plane on the way there, I don't really believe it, especially nowadays, you never know what can happen. I'm excited. I am taking a little downtime now, because it's been the Moon Knight was a very long shoot. It was 8 months in Europe.
Wow.
So I was basically the whole year, gone the whole year. And so going to work on getting some input, which I do think for an artist, input is more important than output.
Who do you rely on for that input? Who are the people that you can trust to be honest with you?
Well, certainly my wife, and Sam Gold is like he directed Hamlet.
Oh yeah. Okay.
He's a good buddy of mine, and we really talk. He's someone that I really care a lot about, and I get his a lot of joy from talking to him. And actually the person that told me the input output thing, which I stole, is a guy named Brian Burton, who's I don't. It's tough because you're making me name drop here, but he's like he's such an inspiration for me. He also goes by Danger Mouse. He's the producer.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I knew the name was familiar. I couldn't.
Yeah, and he's just such a just a beautiful artist and someone that I look up to so much and inspires me a lot. Just his mindfulness when it comes to what he does.
Having worked with so many amazing directors, I mean, really from the start, that you've just had all-star directors. What do you hope for from a director when you show up to set?
That he knows where to put the camera.
Yeah.
I think that's the big one.
Yeah.
And that he or she or they are watching what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
That she's paying attention. I think that's a big one. Know where the camera is going and see what is being filmed. I think those two things, because a lot of things that I've done, they don't, that has not been the case. It's like, it could be here, could be there. Blah, blah. And it doesn't mean that things can't change and things can't shift and conversations can happen. I mean, those things are great. But you want to have trust. You want to be in a situation where you can really feel trust, so that you're free to try shit and to fail.
Have you talked to the Coen brothers about reuniting on something? And whatever it is, it has to be shot in black and white.
I have been begging to be recast, and they have yet to do it, either singularly or as a duo. So I don't know. We'll see. Maybe one day.
Because Joel's getting into Shakespeare now. Seems like a perfect fit.
You would think. And I would too. And here I am, not in Macbeth.
You're a part of, so many different universes, and even films like Ex Machina, which have very passionate fans. But with Star Wars and now Dune, and you're in the Marvel world now. You're technically one of the Spider-Men also, from Into the Spider-Verse. Another meme, another time where you got memed. What is it that people most want to talk about when they see you?
Scenes from a Marriage has actually been a big one. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of people talking to me about that. I think it's just so intense,
Yeah.
But they don't even necessarily say good job. They're like, I saw Scenes from a Marriage. Whew. That kind of thing. I'm like, sorry, I don't know. Yeah. So I think that there's been a lot of that, and then Dune. It was a nice year, and then Card Counter. I mean, for me, that's one that I'm just so proud of, because it's a tiny little movie and it's weird. And I think for the people that do really go with it, it's really rewarding.
Yeah, 3 very wildly different roles too. Yeah. That's pretty cool. Yeah. Well, again, I want to thank you so much for being here today on the behalf of the SAG-AFTRA Foundation. Thanks for sharing your experiences with your fellow performers. We're so appreciative.
I'm so happy to. Yeah, thanks for asking me to do this.